Let's see how we can use Microsoft's newly released checkbox feature to create a select all option in a checklist. This new checkbox feature was widely released in July of 2024. So if you've got Office 365, this is located on the Insert ribbon. Now let's see what we're going to build, and then I'll show you all the steps. Here we have a list of pizza toppings that we want the patron to pick from. And so we want the user to be able to just go in here and check, or check, whichever toppings they're interested in. But what if they want all the toppings? Wouldn't it be nice if they could just hit select all and check every box? Or maybe if they don't want any toppings, they could hit check all and turn them all off. But we also want the flexibility to say, I want most of the toppings, so I'll go ahead and select the whole list, but then I'll just exempt the few that I don't want. Or clear the whole list and just pick the few that I do. To do this will require just a little bit of VBA coding, but I've already written all the code for you. I just need to show you where to copy paste it. So let's build this select all option. We'll begin by adding the checkboxes to our list. So here I have just typed in text. Let's highlight all of the cells directly to the left of those words because that's where we want to place our checkboxes. So with those cells highlighted, we'll go to Insert and I'll click Checkbox. And that adds the checkboxes. Now while I'm here, I'd like a deselected checkbox to be sort of a lighter gray in color, and then when the user checks it, I want it to turn green. So we'll go up to Home, and we'll change the font color to sort of a medium to darker gray. Now to test the checkboxes, we can click, 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 and of course they work as expected. Now I have a whole video I created on the implementation and use of these checkboxes, and if you want to see that video, just click the link in the video description or the card in the upper right. But the Select All checkbox is just by itself. It's no different than any other checkbox. So how do we get this to basically talk to the other checkboxes? Well, this is where the little bit of VBA code comes in. I'm going to go up to View and turn my headings back on. We can see that the Select All checkbox is in B5, and all of the other checkboxes go from B6 to B15. So let's just make a mental note of that. B5 is the Select All, 6 through 15 are the other checkboxes. We need to go into the Visual Basic Editor. One way to do that, and what I think is one of the easier ways, is to right-click on any sheet tab and select View Code. Alt F11 will also activate this window. In the upper left corner, you're seeing a list of all of your open Excel files. And so here we have our Select All Checkbox demo file. We only have one sheet called Select All Test, and we need to double-click that. This will switch us to that sheet's code sheet. Now from the supplied text file from the link in the video description, we want to take this code here and copy paste it into Sheet 1's code sheet. So I'll select all this text, copy it, Control C, go back to the code sheet for Sheet 1 and paste it. Now you don't have to understand VBA code, but if you're curious about just what a little bit of this does, this invokes what's called a worksheet change event. It's an event-driven macro. In other words, the macro automatically executes when a certain event occurs. In this case, we're monitoring cell B5. And if anything changes in B5, we want to execute the macro. Now remember, B5 is our Select All checkbox. So if that changes, do something. Well, if B5 changes, I want to check to see if the value of B5 is a true. In other words, there's a check. Well, if there is, set all of the cells from B6 to B15 to true. Otherwise, check to see if B5 was set to false. In other words, the check was removed. Well, if that's the case, then set all of the cells from B6 to B15 to false. Now, one thing about this code that I discovered was that if you use the code without this enable events equals false trigger, it sends Excel into some type of loop that ends up crashing Excel. So we have to add this application enable events equals false before we perform this logic. This way the endless loop won't trigger and crash Excel. Now once that code is done, we need to reactivate enable events because enable events does other things besides just endless loop detection. So the only thing you'll need to change in here for your world is the cell that holds the Select All checkbox, testing for that cell here and here, and then which other cells do you want to change either when that checkbox is applied or when that checkbox is removed. So we can close this window. Now let's give it a test. I'll select all. Every one of those toppings gets checked. If I deselect the Select All option, every one of the other checkboxes is cleared. So we can select all, but still go back and deselect specific items we don't want, or clear the whole list, and then just add the ones that we do. Now the last thing I'd like to do is have these checkboxes turn green when a check is present, but maintain it sort of medium dark gray when not checked. Well, this is all going to be the result of conditional formatting. Since underneath these checkboxes are nothing but a series of true and false statements, it's going to be very easy to create conditional formatting logic. So I'll highlight all these checkbox cells, go up to Home, Conditional Formatting, and I'm going to create a new rule. I'll use a formula to create this rule, and this is going to be a very simple formula. So again, with B5 through B15 highlighted, the rule will just be equals B5. That's it. In other words, is B5 a true? Well, if the checkbox is checked, it's a true. We want some sort of new color. If it's not checked, it's a false. We leave everything alone. Now, by leaving B5 as a relative reference, this rule will check B5 for true. It will also check B6, 7, 8, 9, all the way to 15. So the only thing we'll do is we'll go to Format, and we'll change our font color to green. Hit OK, and we can already see it in action. We hit Select All, everything's green. We clear Select All, we're all back to medium gray. If I select all and then start deselecting, those deselected items go back to medium gray. Clear the list, start selecting individual items, the color still works. Oh, I almost forgot. Because you are putting code into this file, you will have to save the file as an XLSM file, an Excel spreadsheet with macros. If you save it as an XLSX file, that code will be discarded. So that's how we can use Excel's new checkbox feature to create a select all option. It does require a little bit of VBA coding, but the coding is very simple. I really like Excel's new checkbox feature. It's much better than the old forms control checkboxes. So if you haven't tried it out, give it a whirl. And if you'd like to make it fancier, like with a select all, try this code. Don't forget to download the sample files from the link in the video description, and let me know what you think about this in the comments. Thanks for watching, and remember, at BCTI, the learning never stops.